Globalism, or the New World Order as it was termed by President George H.W. Bush, is a system of global governance or oversight introduced in the Western world during, but mostly after, the Soviet Union ceased to exist some 30 years ago, and it has held sway over much of the free world ever since. But global institutions like the European Union and the World Trade Organization are being threatened as never before by growing nationalist movements in the US and throughout Europe. I'm Tim Donner with 5 facts about the worldwide pitched battle between the global establishment and upstart nationalist movements throughout the West. Fact 1. The surprising victories of Brexit and Donald Trump may well represent the first steps in a growing demand for a return to national sovereignty. The evidence can be seen throughout continental Europe, in France, Italy, Spain, the Netherlands, even Germany, and elsewhere. Nationalist parties are collectively attracting more votes than at any time since World War II, after which organizations like NATO arose to prevent future wars and the spread of Soviet communism. With that threat now removed, it begs the question of how these global organizations maintain unity and control over their member states in the midst of a wave of nationalism spreading across Europe. Fact 2. Opposition to the EU has increased substantially following the election of nationalist leaders in major Central and Eastern European countries. Poland and Hungary, 2 countries formerly enslaved behind the Soviet Iron Curtain during the Cold War, have now adopted free market economic models, limited the kind of inflow of refugees which have overrun Germany in particular, and adopted policies often at odds with the greater EU. Presidents Orban in Hungary and Duda in Poland have been a thorn in the side of their EU compatriots and have been largely held at arm's distance from their more socialist-minded peers. Fact 3. Strong evidence of the pushback against globalism is the party considered far right in Germany gaining more power than at any time since World War II. Ever since the fall of Hitler, Germany has kept tight controls on its nationalism for obvious reasons. But in the most recent elections, with Nazis now 75 years removed from power, the Alternative for Deutschland party captured more seats than any nationalist party since World War II. But it's also important to point out that not all nationalist parties are right of center. The best example of a left-wing nationalist movement is in France, where Marine Le Pen, the fiery anti-EU leader, is also a socialist on many other issues. Fact 4. Most EU nations have consistently produced low-growth, high-unemployment economies. This is emblematic of the enduring issues surrounding socialism. The unemployment rates in Italy, France, and Spain have been running at around 10%. And the rate for the EU as a whole is more than double that of the US. And the growth rate, the gross domestic product for the 28 nations in the EU, is most recently at less than 1.5%, again, about half the rate of the US. And fact 5, more countries following an independent nationalist path will likely mean less multilateral trade deals and more bilateral deals. Once England finally settles on how it will depart the EU, more than 3 years after voters in England approved Brexit, the UK will begin making bilateral deals or trade agreements with individual countries instead of the EU bloc. Some of these agreements will kick in as soon as Britain is officially out of the EU, and the biggest of these agreements will be with its largest trading partner, the United States. Indeed, the world will be focused on what happens with the UK and Brexit, for if Britain is able to successfully reestablish its sovereignty with strong foreign relationships and a sound economy, there's no telling how many other countries bound to the globalist European Union might be tempted to follow suit. We hope you enjoyed this and learned a thing or two. If so, please subscribe to the Liberty Nation channel right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. I'm Tim Donner. Thanks for joining us.